almost 10 a.m. in Miami. It's actually 9:30 in Miami. We are meeting Dennis Scholl today, a very important Miami art collector. Prior even the time Art Basel Miami started, I remember visiting his house in one of the first editions. He's also a film producer, award-winning film producer of several documentaries of the art scene, and he raised $100,000 for artists in need from the region in Miami. And here, thank you for taking the time talking to us and share some insights. Hey, Dennis.
Hey, my friend, how are you?
Good, nice to see you again. Long time.
And you. What a strange way to be seen.
Absolutely, but it's also interesting because I remember, I think it's a decade ago when I came visit your presentations during Art Basel Miami, and there was always a new discovery to be made, always something you haven't seen before, and artists to follow. So maybe we can start with you telling us a bit about this initiative you were driving.
The one now you're talking about for raising money for artists?
Yes.
So I oversee an organization in Miami. It's called Oolite Arts. Oolite is a limestone in which the entire community that we live in sits on. It's kind of coral rock looking. They quarry it, they put it on the sides of walls. So we've rebranded ourselves as Oolite Arts, Oolite. And our mission is to be a support organization for visual artists and filmmakers in Miami. And when the virus hit, there are really two very fragile populations in Miami that employ a lot of people. The restaurant community, kind of the tourism community, and the artist community. Everybody knows that artists aren't 9-to-5 health insurance, pension plan type of workers generally. They generally work in what we call the gig economy. They do their best to have, to find good work, art handler, art photographer, many things that are ancillary to the art world, but then they need time to make their work. So they were hit the hardest because those gigs went away immediately and they will be long time before they come back. So we knew we had to do something because we had a very fragile population. We're talking about issues where people don't have food and don't have shelter because the rent was due April 1st. So we funded an initiative just called the Relief Fund, the COVID Relief Fund by Oolite Arts. And we invited every single working artist in Miami. You have to be a Miami resident. You have to be a working artist, with a CV that shows that you're a working artist. And you have to just tell us what gigs you lost. And when we got that information, we began to write checks. And so far, we've written around $250, $500 checks to artists in Miami. It's got to happen. Artists aren't part of any bill to save them. They're not going to, they're saving the airlines. That's great. They're saving the banks. That's great. But artists, they're fragile. So we wanted to make sure people could get through this month and have food at least. And we'll see what happens next month. We don't know. A lot of money came in. The Wolfson Family Foundation, a longtime supporter of culture in our community, donated a significant amount of money. The Perez family, from which the Perez Art Museum is named, donated some money. And the most rewarding thing was that a number of artists who did have good jobs and didn't lose their jobs also contributed. So it's been a beautiful thing, and we hope to be able to help even more artists.
Amazing. Yeah, because it's I think it's hard to imagine for us here in Berlin, Germany, Europe, who live in a zone of social security and I don't know, state responsibility, and especially in Berlin, it's I think only Berlin. I noticed because we talked about this yesterday also, and Berlin, every artist got €5,000 from. And
believe me, we are watching over here. We're going, wow, like it's inconceivable that could happen in America. It's not even on the table. We don't. You may know that I've spent the last 10 years working on a project with Aboriginal artists in Australia. And in the Aboriginal art community, the artist is really number one. They are revered. And when I would come home and I would think about America and I would think about how we consider our artists and how we think of them, I just kept asking myself, what if we thought that art and artists were as important as some of the other things that we do? And of course, in Germany, they are. And that's where we're very envious over here right now.
Tell us about this project. How did you come across that?
Well, Oolite has been around for a very long time. And I joined it after they had a significant liquidity event by selling a building. And it gave them enough money to then begin to do things for the community. So we give free studios to around 18 or 20 artists at a time. We're in the process of building a brand new building in a section of the city of Miami that will have a theater, it'll have exhibition space, it'll have classrooms. We did 373 art classes last year for adults. We have a regular exhibition schedule of works, and Larry Osai Mensa was our curator the last 2 years during the Basel exhibition. Right now we're on Lincoln Road, and we're only a few blocks away from the convention center. So a lot of our friends, when they come in town for Art Basel, come and visit us. So Oolite has been around a long time, and it's an important component for the community.
There has been a lot of discussions on ArtNet and various media outlets about the future of art fairs. And me, who I think I was like from year 2 joining back then, even at the beach, you remember the containers at the oceanfront. I mean, Miami changed so much since Art Basel Miami was started. It went through a dramatic real estate and economic crisis, but it came out of this like even stronger, depending from the point of view, of course. But how do you see the future of the fair and the relevance of fairs in general? Because I think it's undeniable that for Miami, it was really an important motor, no?
Yeah, it's very true. Miami had a reputation as being a very good collector town before Art Basel. Everybody knows we have wonderful collectors like Rubel and Margulies and Brayman and Robbins and Lindemann. And, you know, Deborah and I have been involved in that community for a very long time, De La Cruz. And we all actually got together in the early days and tried to convince Sam Keller that this would be a great place for a second fair. And they were really thinking about LA, I think. And I remember like it was yesterday. We had a party one night on the river, and it was a perfect night. And Sam was there, and I think it was Rudolph actually was there. And
yeah. He was still. That Sam told me that once. That Rudolph was still. Or these things take so long, huh?
Yeah, and that was the moment we knew we had them, and we knew because all of us had been going to Art Basel and Basel for many, many years. I think I'd gone 13 times in a row by then. The fair was unmissable if you care about contemporary art. And we knew we had them then, and we knew it would change our community dramatically. Many, many things have happened since then. And from people from the outside looking in, it looks like the fair made it all happen. The fair was a very important catalyst because it shined a bright light on Miami. People like you would have never come to Miami 10, 15 times in a row, 20 times in a row. And every once in a while get out of that bubble of the fair, which is so important to the commerce of the gallery, and go see a little bit more of what our city's about. And as that happened, our city, our community got a sense of itself as a cultural place, as a place in which culture mattered. We weren't a cultural destination at that time, but we have become one. We have, 2 brand new museums that are both architectural marvels. We have a ballet that is the envy of most ballet companies in the world. We have the best teaching symphony in America that's housed in a Frank Gehry building. You know, Zaha's last big building is
Herzog de Meuron big building that you have this giant, including Elmgren and Raagstedt, the big public art project now all around Convention Center. It's true. Yeah, and I think interesting is for those who don't know the collections you just mentioned, they represent the best span you can have of art, from modern art, post-war, very young contemporary, with a big Cisneros also, South American, De La Cruz, the Rubels, American art and European art. So it's a surprising wide range of art. And then really what's very true is, and I think which got a bit under the, which been pushed a bit in the shadow is a diversity Miami has to offer. I remember Dan Graham taking me to Little Havana. It's an entire neighborhood which is like I don't know, like Cuba in a glass box or so, So it's really and then there's House Beach, which a lot of people know, but there's Design District became like a new entire area. And what you predict the next decade? How you think this will continue?
Well, I think in Miami, what's going to happen is that the new productivity when it comes to buildings, real estate, things like that, will be north of the design district. Craig Robbins has basically created a miracle there. He's created a world-class place that everybody wants to be now. But I think what you're going to see is north of that is where the city will continue to grow. We call it the Upper East Side. There also, some people call it Lemon City, some people call it Little Haiti, some people call it Little River. But that's where we're going to move the art center. We are moving off of Lincoln Road, and we have actually hired Barozzi Vega architects in Barcelona, who have done a lot of buildings in Zurich. We have hired them to design and build a new Oolite Arts Village on a very large piece of property that we've acquired north of the design district, less than 2 miles away. So that's where a lot of the city is going to grow to, because that's where we still have land, a little bit of land, and a lot of bit of adaptive reuse buildings.
So it's the fair was a very important catalysator somehow and motivator, but the city grown out of, or it's very independent from this, right?
It is. Like I said, the fair continues. It's great because it's like Christmas comes. You know, the fair continues to remind us that we are a strong cultural city, that we are attracting people to our city because of culture, which is something we had never done before. We attracted people for good partying, and good clubs, but never for culture. And so the fair continues to remind us and be a catalyst to us about that issue, which is a really lovely thing to have happen every year. I think that, we'll have the fair as long as the fair will have us. And I know they've just signed up for another few years. So we're happy about that. We continue to redo the convention center, to make it special. My job at Oolite, though, is to make sure Miami feels like that 365 days a year, not 5 days a year. And we have a good art scene here. We have a good visual art community.
And what's your prediction on post COVID-19, the art world post COVID-19? How do you think our behavior on art fairs and traveling, will it change? Is the local more important than before?
I don't know that it's about local or not. It's about travel or not. That is really what it comes down to. I have to say, I'm much older than you. We have seen this before. And I don't mean COVID-19. None of us have seen this. This is the event of the last 90 years in our country, certainly, and maybe in the world, other than the world wars. And this event will cause us to begin to think about art again, but in a different way, I think. I recall that I was a young collector in 1990. And we all went to sleep in 1990 one day, and everybody wanted art. And we woke up the next day, and nobody wanted art. Now, the art scene was much smaller. It was probably, a 20th of the size that it is now. But it was literally like they turned a switch off overnight. Everybody was a collector.
Where did you think that came from?
These cycles just roll through. They're all about consumer confidence. They're all about confidence in the art world. And, because at some point in time, what happens is the art world percolates up. And as collectors, we joke that we're really getting tired of paying $10,000 for $2,000 artists. And that happens. And so, and then there's this kind of, it falls off a cliff again, because what are we collecting as collectors? A bit of canvas, you know, a little few daubs of paint and a wood stretcher. You know, it's not gold, it's not diamonds. And what are those things really when you think about it? So there's got to be this consumer confidence that begins to rise again. And I believe that will happen in the art world. It always does.
It always did, yeah.
Does. We're always chasing beauty. We're always chasing intellectual curiosity. And, you know, we will, the art world will come back, I think, pretty quickly, actually, because the one thing that's happening now that I'm interested in is that we're all looking to go online shopping. And I've been speaking to some of the auction houses, and the problem isn't that they don't want to do it. The problem is that they can't get their staff into the buildings to catalog the work, photograph the work, etc. And so I think as soon as you get enough of that, people will go online, migrate online, and you'll see a lot of online auctions. The online shopping, I think that I bought a work of art last week. I bought a work of art last week from a very significant New York gallery. I haven't seen it. I looked at it online and I said, that's for me.
The problem is a bit also to get works shipped around right now, of course, huh? But
you can't be in a hurry.
Which online offerings did you find worth looking at? What would you recommend us to look at?
I loved what Pace has been doing. The Pace is really giving me, you know how sometimes galleries will do a show. Larry does it a lot. Loring Augustine, you know, would do it. Where galleries will do a show that's clearly a historical, almost a museum show. And maybe there's 1 or 2 works for sale, but there's 10 or 12 works in there. What Pace is putting online is really at that level. I think it's extraordinary what they're doing. They're putting a lot of time and energy into what's going up online. And it gives you confidence. It makes you say to yourself, you know, I've seen that artist work before. I've seen that artist work in that medium. I think I can translate what I'm seeing online to my reaction when I see it in person. I think I can do that. It's difficult if you don't know the artist and you don't know the medium. If you haven't seen work in the medium that you're pursuing by them, you know. I was looking yesterday at, I think, Christina Quarles' drawings, and they looked great, you know, but I've never seen one in person. So it makes it a little tougher.
Yeah, we are working on an idea of a group show related to time. And I think that the chances, you know, On Kawara, Peter Dreher, and then the chances to usually you would have to ship things, get them, and now you can take things in consignment from somewhere, and you can create context which kind of trigger ideas you probably wouldn't have come to otherwise, you know. So you can be it also kind of creates a lot of flexibility. I'm gonna add some question here. For example, this one: how I guess it means how did you start to collect?
Well, I grew up in what we would call in America a blue collar family. In other words, I had no cultural exposure in my life through the age of probably 22. I was a scuba diver and a water skier and things like that. I grew up in Miami. And,
one of these guys who walk around topless on the beach, huh?
I was always on the water. I was never on the beach. But at the age of 22, I wandered into a one-room museum at Florida International University where I got my first degree. And I loved the feeling of the cool white box. The space that I was in was it felt so good to me. And it triggered something in me. And subsequently, I went to New York and I went to the Met. And I walked into the room with Clifford Still works in there. And the same thing happened. I felt overwhelmed by those artworks. It's the first time that it ever happened to me, but it never left me. And so I began to try to figure out how to collect because I didn't have much money. Then I wound up with a print collection in the beginning, which I think most people do when they get started. And the first 2 works I bought were a Robert Motherwell print and a Roy Lichtenstein print. And it took me ages to figure out how to buy them well. Would they matter? You know, I got to all the good questions early. I didn't have all the answers though.
Yeah,
and that was 42 and a half years ago. And since then, I've acquired 2,000 works of art.
So, but that's interesting. You came into collecting via limited editions also.
Absolutely. Because I learned early that you want the best example of an artist that you can afford. And I could buy the best example of a Motherwell print, but I couldn't buy the best example of a Motherwell painting. As my life changed, I was able to do that in the photography world, for example. It depends on what you pick as a place to land in as a collector, as to whether or not you can do these things or not. Right now, Deborah and I are building a drawing collection. And in the last 2 years, I bought de Kooning and Peter Halley and Michael Heiser and Smithson and Judd, and you know, because I can get those drawings, and it fits within my place in the art world, and plus it's a place that people aren't really that focused on right now. The art world is, you know, gotten pretty glitzy again, and so when they get glitzy, I try to go low.
Yeah, it's a good advice. You have to find your niche, right? You have to find your niche and specialize.
Yeah, wanting what everybody else wants when they want it does you no good, particularly if you're new.
It's expensive.
It's expensive, and there are dues to pay to get access to work that is special. They don't. You can have all the money in the world, but in fact, if you don't have a place in the art world, you're not going to get the works that, you know, everybody else wants. There are people that are simply, you know, bigger and more established than you, and that's okay. You know, it is a fun journey. That's the most important thing.
And last but not least, can you tell us about your films?
Sure. About a decade ago, I decided to try to make a short film. And I did. I made a short film called Sunday's Best, about why African-American women wear hats to church. And boy, just like art collecting, I got the bug. And so since then, I've made 22 shorts and 6 features. And they're all about art or artists or culture. And so I've made short films with people like Wynton Marsalis. I made a short film with Theaster. I made a short film with Tracy Emin. I made a series of 15 short films at the Anderson Ranch in Aspen with people like Wengechi Mutu and Ai Weiwei and Kathy Opie and John Kessler, you know, all these great, interesting artists.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just finished a film that is out now. It's out streaming because it was supposed to play a 50 museum tour. I had it all booked, and of course, nobody's showing anything right now. So that all went away. So I decided to put it out on streaming. The name of the film is Lifeline, and it is about Clifford Still, who has always been my favorite artist since the age of 22 when I walked into the Met, stood in that room, and he blew me away. And
wow, so it's kind of a closed circle. Where can we see it?
You can see it on kinonow.com, KINONOW, kinonow.com, and it is streaming on there. And it's a film about Still and about his irascibility, his cantankerousness, his family. There's a lot of interesting people in it. Mark Radford is in it. Julie Meritu is in it. Julian Schnabel is in it.
Fantastic.
Neil Benezra is in it. Jim Demetrian is in it. There's a lot of interesting people in the film talking about Still. Still meant a lot to many contemporary artists that I was really surprised about. The more I talked to artists, the more I learned that Still has had a really big impact on many of them. So
I think his work has this power of. I also remember I walked into a room of Clifford Still paintings. I think it was at Onash, and they have such an amazing physical presence, which kind of like gets you, you know, without you don't. This you don't need to know so much to experience the strengths of it, I think.
Well, it's true, and for me, I was never going to be able to own a Clifford Still. There's only a couple hundred in circulation. The last one went for $23 million. So for me, as you said, Johan, it's kind of coming full circle to me. It allows me to tell a great story about an artist who I revere. It's a tough story because, you know, he pretty much hated almost everybody in the art world except for Pollock. You know, he
very
didn't
bitter
like the
person.
critics. You know, Jerry Saltz is in it. He does a really great bit about critics and Clifford Still. It's really funny. It's actually without a doubt the funniest part of the film.
Kinonow.com.
Kinonow.com.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And next
Johannes,
time you're going to
great
show
see you. Stay well, my friend.
some art. Say hi to Debbie. Ciao.
Bye, everybody.